Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to our webinar series Challenges of Expanding Access to Health Products and Fight Against Neglected Tropical Diseases. This webinar is organized by Japan Alliance on Global Neglected Tropical Diseases, JAGntd, and sponsored by Global Health Innovative Technology Fund, JAGntd Fund. My name is Kota Yoshioka, Assistant Professor at the Institute of Tropical Medicine, Nagasaki University. And I'm accompanied by my co-moderator, Dr. Isaac Chikuwana. He is Senior Director for Investment Strategy, Access, and Delivery at JAGntd Fund. It's our pleasure to have you all in this webinar series. Thank you for joining us. Okay, let me start with two housekeeping issues. First, please switch your language between English and Japanese by clicking on the globe symbol in your Zoom screen. Second, please post your questions anytime during the session by clicking the Q&A button. You can post your questions anonymously, and you can write your questions either in English or Japanese. We have a Q&A session after the lecture. Great, we are all set. Now, let me remind you of some key aspects of this webinar series. This webinar series is designed to discuss access to health products in the field of NTDs. And we believe that there is no point in developing a new medicine if we fail to deliver it to people who need it. So there is no success without access. And with this spirit in mind, we will look into key access challenges for NTDs and discuss how these challenges can be overcome. In the previous session in September, we revisited concepts of access. What is access? Access is defined as end users' ability to obtain and appropriately use health products when they are needed. And access can be shaped by many factors, but they can be sorted in 4 categories, which were architecture, availability, affordability, and adoption. And understanding barriers, facilitating factors, and actors in these 4 categories is helpful to design strategies for improving access. And in the previous session, we concluded that creating access to good health technologies is not easy, it's very challenging, but can be done, and it does happen. Now, today, this is our second session. We want to learn from a real, ongoing access story. Our topic is Fexinidazole. This is a new treatment for human African Trypanosomiasis, or sleeping sickness. And according to the WHO, this disease affects 36 sub-Saharan African countries. And without treatment, it can be fatal. And the Fexinidazole was developed just a few years ago by a product development partnership, including a non-profit organization, Drugs for Neglected Diseases Initiative, or DNDi. And I think this is a promising story because the drug developers by themselves are engaged in creating access in remote areas of African countries. Great. And before I introduce today's special guest speakers, I would like to share a short film entitled A Doctor's Dream, A Pill for Sleeping Sickness. The film was prepared by DNDi and will show how Fexinidazole has been developed Please watch it.
Le cauchemar de tout docteur, c'est de tuer son patient. La maladie du sommeil, ça fait peur, parce que la maladie du sommeil, vous voyez ces signes d'agressivité. Vous avez les signes de quelqu'un qui devient fou. La maladie du sommeil ou la trypanosomiase humaine africaine, c'est une maladie infectieuse parasitaire parce qu'elle est transmise par la mouche tsetse.
The fly injects a parasite that circulates, goes into the blood, the lymph nodes, and later on will go in the central nervous system. And then eventually, if they don't have treatment, they will fall into a coma and die.
The last decades of the 20th century have been very productive in terms of new treatment, but nothing happened for those very neglected populations. Personally, when I was working with MSF during the 80s, 90s, I was confronted to a situation that was particularly dramatic because the only treatment available to treat sleeping sickness was melarsoprol, an arsenic derivative, killing 1 out of 20 of patients because of toxicity.
It was described by patients as fire in the veins.
Dans mes prières, j'ai dit, Dieu, est-ce qu'il n'y a pas moyen d'éclairer ces chercheurs pour qu'ils trouvent un médicament facile à prendre pour soigner ces gens qui meurent, ne fût-ce qu'un comprimé.
The first step has been to improve the situation with a combination of nifurtimox and eflornithine called NTDs.
So this is NTDs, and all this is for one patient.
Le NTDs, c'est un bon médicament, et très efficace, et qui guérit plus facilement. Mais c'est la logistique qui est lourde, parce que c'est fait, il faut transporter ces cartons et l'amener dans le milieu où il y a des malades. Souvent, ils sont dans des forêts, ils sont dans des villages.
This treatment is available only for the second stage of the disease, so you need to go through a very difficult and painful lumbar puncture that every patient needs to be confronted with.
Ceux qui viennent à l'hôpital, on est obligé de les garder parce qu'on doit contrôler la perfusion. Ça doit se donner en intraveineuse.
And the consequence is we wanted to have an oral treatment to treat all the stages of the disease. So we started our research on this field with the basis that one class of drugs, nitromidazole, was having an effect on this sort of parasite. So we have organized a data mining of all the different compounds of nitromidazole coming from university, coming from pharmaceutical company. One presented the characteristic of what we were looking for, a molecule that was called Fexinidazole, and it was developed during the 80s and abandoned because of lack of interest of developing a product for parasitology.
Sanofi had the molecule, but we partnered with DNDi, who brought their experience from preclinical research and being able to do the clinical trials in these very difficult to reach areas.
We started the study in 2012 in DRC and Central African Republic. It was incredible to have to think about how you would do sophisticated clinical research in an unsophisticated setting.
La RDC est un grand pays et la logistique, elle est lourde.
There was poor infrastructure, lack of scientific lab equipment, no one trained on doing clinical research, and the political instability in these regions. To overcome these challenges, we had to bring electricity. We had to bring microscopes. We also brought some technology like internet and satellites to make sure we would have the connection. We did training of 200 people in good clinical practice, in pharmacovigilance, to make sure that they could comply with what is needed to have a new drug registered according to international standards. We supported the national programs with cars, with boats, to go and look for patients. We work with the best teams, those that know how to diagnose these patients, those that are treating these patients.
Abanye oyoka soni. Bana nabelaki, nakomaki makasi, nalamba, nakenda zamba, nalamba kitoko pe na bana nanga toza bien. Tata lelo te makasi na nzoto.
Patients can be treated much closer to where they live.
On a confiance aux patients et c'est bien.
We're on the path to elimination of sleeping sickness.
It's not utopia anymore to be able to do this incredible research in these incredible conditions.
If we bring the right partner together, we can achieve the best science for a very neglected population.
Le Fexi, d'abord, il rejoint mon rêve. C'est merveilleux. C'est merveilleux.
Okay, thank you. So I think the film showed us why fexinidazole is so needed and how these very small pills can make a big difference in the lives of the patient. And the greatest news is that fexinidazole is now approved by a regulatory agency in European Union. But this is not the end point of this access story. So let's see what happened then and what should be happen now. I would like to introduce today's two guest speakers from DNDi. The first speaker is Dr. Olaf Valverde Mordt. He is a medical manager in human African Trypanosomiasis drug development program at DNDi. Dr. Olaf will provide us with a high-level overview of the access challenges. Then we also invite the second speaker, Dr. Florent. He works at DNDi too as Access and Human African Trypanosomiasis Platform Coordinator. And he will explain us the field-level access challenges that DNDi and its partners are facing right now. Dr. Olaf and Dr. Florent, over to you.
Good morning, Yoshoka-san. Good afternoon for you. I'm going to share some slides where we can see first the challenges and the opportunities, not only challenges that we had by preparing this development that you have so nicely seen in the film, and still what remains to be done in access, because the bottom line of every development means that we wish the drugs to arrive to the patients. So Florent and myself, we have been working for a long time together in this with many other people, and thanks to the people and to the enthusiasm of the people in the countries that were presented in the film, Central African Republic and Democratic Republic of Congo, we arrived to complete the clinical trials and to complete the development. But now let's go into the access element, and I introduce you to again what was presented already in the first session about the determinants, the different determinants of access by Professor Reich. And I will focus, because I will show you in a minute. I will focus mainly in the issues of adoption. We have some facilities on availability and affordability, and this helps us to concentrate the talk of today into the adoption elements. So something that we were really lucky is that part of the access to human African trypanosomiasis treatment was already solved before we started developing Fexinidazole. We had well set up existing case detection activities through different elements that Florent will introduce more in detail, including mobile teams, but also with specialized diagnosis and treatment structures, and a very fine idea, which was, I would say, a very detailed work in epidemiology by WHO and FAO, that they developed an atlas of human African trypanosomiasis, where they located every single patient that had been declared, and that allow us to have a very nice overview on where the disease is being present. Another important point is that since the beginning of the 20th or 21st century, the producers of all drugs that were being used for treating sleeping sickness had already arrived to an agreement with WHO, so that they would provide all treatments free at the point of delivery. And Sanofi, one of those two producers, was since 2009 in agreement with us, so that they supported and participated in the development of the new drugs. In that sense, DNDi was in charge of the clinical development, and Sanofi took over for the industrial development, which is quite a complex part of it. And the third big element that was already solved before we started our development is the existence of a specific regulatory support, regulatory agencies, incentives to develop products specifically for neglected tropical diseases. We get a very strong support from the European Medicines Agency through a program that is called EUM for All, Medicines for All means, where they facilitate review with all the technical ability they have, all the strengths they have. They review products that are not specifically oriented to the public in the European Union, but to be used outside the European Union, concretely targeting neglected tropical diseases. And this review, done together with WHO people and also with regulators from the recipient countries, facilitate very much the introduction of the process. Another important element is from the Food and Drug Administration of the United States, where they promote very simply the development of products against neglected tropical diseases, which can receive, once approved by them, can receive what is called an accelerated review voucher that you can use for any other product. That means that this accelerated review voucher can advance the regulatory approval of any commercially interesting product, so that the value is economically is very important. And they give this voucher once you develop a product for a neglected tropical disease, and you can use for any other product. And another important element that was already very deeply discussed in the first session is the planning since the beginning of development, planning for the access. And there are two very important elements here. The first one is to prepare a target product profile. What we want is to find out a product that is easy to use and acceptable, so that we can guarantee the success once it's introduced into the use in the national programs. So we discussed with the main stakeholders, national control programs, international and endemic countries research institutions, through an organization that is called the HAT platform, Human African Trypanosomiasis platform, which is a point of a relationship between all these actors. And during several discussions, we established that what we wanted was something that was very nicely shown in the film, something that was oral administration, tablets, a shorter treatment duration than the one previously existing, from 14 days into 10 days, reduced production costs, simplified production cost, and very importantly, that the product should be stable in tropical conditions. It's not only that it's stable at 25 degrees, but we pushed a bit the conditions of the stability testing up to 30 degrees Celsius. And other, of course, other characteristics that made the product attractive to be used and simple. The access environment. Not only the question is not only how to promote the access of your own product, but how to support the environment that allows access around the product itself. One of the very important elements that is still work ongoing is to improve the diagnostic capacity, not only in the mobile teams, but also the awareness and the capacity in the normal regular health structures. Because sometimes it's not easy in the first steps of the disease, it's not easy to differentiate from other very common diseases like malaria. Also, generate disease awareness in the population. The disease has been reducing steadily, and the feeling that the human African trypanosomiasis may be risky for the people is very low. So we are facilitating campaigns to remind the people that the disease exists still in several areas. Of course, which was the improvement brought by the new product in the simplification and also in the logistics, and how the general access to health services is very often difficult in many countries, including also the communication, including arriving to the health services. So The general access has also several points that we need to understand, which is the perceived quality by the population of the service, the actual use of the services, and the availability close to the target population. So the decentralization of the health services. The previous treatments were necessarily given at reference hospitals because they were intravenous. The new treatment can be given in peripheral structures, which is something very useful. But first, let me pass the word to Dr. Florent, who will first introduce you into the characteristics of the disease itself, and then run you through our main challenges and our main actions towards those challenges, specifically for the Fexinidazole development. Florent, à toi.
Okay, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to give you an overview on sleeping sickness, also called the human African Trypanosomiasis, which is a parasitic disease. It's caused by two subspecies of trypanosomiasis. We have the Gambiensis form and the Rhodesians form. The Gambiensis form is located in central and west of Africa, and the Rhodesians form in the east and the south of Africa. This parasite is transmitted by tsetse flies. This disease evolved to two stages, a hemolymphatic stage or the first stage, and a meningoencephalitic stage or the second stage. Without the treatment, this disease leads to the death. But WHO set elimination target at 2,000 cases by 2020. Since 2018, less than 1,000 cases have been reported. In 2002, 663 cases have been reported for Gambiensis form, which is representing 85% of disease. But the Rhodesians form is represented less than 5% of cases in Africa. The diagnostic tools exist. They are consisting to screening tests. For example, we are using CAT agglutination test for trypanosomiasis and at rapid diagnostic test to select the suspect of sleeping sickness. The positive suspects are confirmed by diagnostic techniques that are sensitive technique tests. But we observe that these diagnostic tools are not always available in the health facilities in remote area in Africa. But new diagnostic tests are in development like ELISA, ERENA, DENA PCR, and recombinant RDT. DNDi want to conduct a test and a treat strategy by using a rapid diagnostic test and acosiborol. And this study will be starting in Q4 2021 in two countries, the DRC and Guinea. Currently, WHO recommend this drug, the following drug for the treatment. For the first stage, currently WHO recommend the following drug. For the first stage, we are using Fexinidazole for Gambians form and pentamidine for Gambians form also. And Cyramine is used for Rhodesians form. During the second stage, we are using also Fexinidazole for Gambians form, and for advanced form of disease, we are using Nifurtimox eflornithine combination therapy. And for Rhodesians form, in the second stage, we are using until now the melarsoprose, which is a toxic drug. But DNDi started the Fexinidazole clinical trials for Rhodesians form that is ongoing. As a reminder, human African Trypanosomiasis is managed through vertical disease-specific program. We can call them the Sleeping Sickness National Control Program. This map is showing you the distribution of disease in focus. These diseases evolve in focus. You can see the countries, and this focus are related to the area of distribution of tsetse flies. And then WHO recommend two types of screening strategies: the active screening, the passive screening. The active screening can be implemented by two mobile teams. You can have the mobile team or the mini mobile team. The mobile team, the big mobile team, is composed by 7 to 9 people. They are screening the village by car. They can screen around 5 to 6,000 people per month. Regarding the mini mobile team, they are using the motorbike with 2 people only. They are doing door-to-door screening, and they can screen around 4,000 people per month. But the passive screening is performed by specialized diagnostic treatment center managed by National Sleeping Control Program. And also this passive screening can be performed by the health facility in the health system. WHO, in this context of low prevalence, recommend to target active screening and also the integration of activity package into general health structure. Regarding our Fexinidazole access project, the objective was to make Fexinidazole available to the majority of Gambians at patients. And for that, we should train health staff in order to extend the heart treatment, including Fexinidazole, to all endemic countries. We are going to organize a post-approval safety study requested by European Medicine Agency, but implemented by the National Sleeping Control Program in collaboration with WHO. We are going also to do the case detection and the patient case management for heart elimination, combining with the national pharmacovigilance system strengthening in the most endemic countries. What are our progress until now? The national treatment guideline have been updated. We obtained the authorization for Fexinidazole use in 8 countries. More than 600 care providers have been trained in more than 200 health facilities in 8 countries. The first treatment of Fexinidazole has been delivered by WHO to DRC in Q1 2020. Until now, more than 200 patients have been treated with Fexinidazole since its distribution in endemic countries, representing 65% of patients treated with Fexinidazole. Regarding case access challenge and the DNDi approach to address them, focusing on the most endemic countries, we have the first case access issue in demand for the treatment. We mentioned that Fexinidazole is not available for children less than 6 years and less than 20 kilos. DNDi proposed to conduct a clinical study of acoziborole in children, which is starting in Q4 2021. The care providers are not informed on the introduction of Fexinidazole in some countries. That's why we want to support the training on Fexinidazole use in the new countries in Africa. Some countries don't have the new national heart diagnostic strategies and tools adapted. We want to support the training of sensitive diagnostic techniques and to help them to adapt their national strategies, including the sensitive technique, the diagnostic. Some countries didn't adopt the WHO guideline, including Fexinidazole treatment. That's why we want, through the heart platform, we want to organize advocacy and to support these endemic countries in order to obtain the authorization of Fexinidazole use and also to adopt WHO guideline during the workshop we are supporting. The national pharmacovigilance system in endemic countries need to be upgraded and reinforced. We want to use Fexinidazole as a front door to strengthen the national pharmacovigilance system in the most endemic countries in the short time. In the long term, we want that this pharmacovigilance national system in the most endemic country can be able to monitor all drugs circulating to their endemic countries.
Excuse me, Dr. Florent, could you wrap up your presentation within 1 minute, please?
Okay. Regarding care access, regarding the supply of treatment, we can say that WHO manages the supplies at international level, and also we have some problem of supply in the post-conflict countries. That's why we want that other partners can help these countries to supply them the product in endemic setting. Regarding the financing, the payment of treatment relative cost combining with the financial accessibility of art diagnostic is an issue because of the poverty or affected population and the lack of health assurance system. We want to give them an additional support like free essential medicine, laboratory consumable, health worker retraining. And we want to set up a payment of lump sum for patients resulting of negotiation between the National Sleeping Control Program and the head of the district. And we want also to organize the advocacy to policymakers in endemic country in order they can include the art treatment in the standard activity package. Okay, thank you to donors supporting our access like Takeda and World Bank, and also to donors supporting our overall mission, UKAID, MSF, and Swift Agency for Development. Other donors are listed in the link we mentioned in the slide. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Florent, and thank you very much, Olaf, for the presentation. I think often when we talk about access, it's very theoretical, but I think this example that you've given us really shows us what was going on behind the scenes, and it also puts the access discussions into perspective, because it actually shows that just having the drug does not necessarily mean that it is accessible. So maybe briefly before I go into the discussion, I'll introduce the JAGntd Fund. I'm responsible for the access of the JAGntd Fund. So the JAGntd Fund is an international public-private partnership that's comprising the government of Japan, philanthropic organizations, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Wellcome Trust, Japanese pharmaceutical companies, and UNDP. Even though we are based in Japan, we fund research and development into health technologies for NTDs, TB, and malaria for low-income countries, basically globally. And as mentioned by Yoshioka-san at the beginning, there's no success without access. So even for JAGntd, we also believe that medicines are valueless without access. So while our focus is on research and development, we also support directly our product development partners in developing their access strategies. And on a more holistic approach, we also participate in discussions like this one, where we talk about access barriers and how we can improve them. So to go back to the presentation, we are already having some action in the Q&A, so we encourage participants to ask their questions or give comments. I already see quite a few, but if you allow me to be selfish a little bit and start with the first question. So maybe this is more directed to Olaf. If I can take you back to your presentation, if you go to the slide, I don't know if you can go back to slide 3. So you mentioned something about having a priority review voucher or expedited review voucher. So I was just curious to know if you know if this facility is also available for Japanese product developers.
Yes, of course. The question is that this is something that depends on submission to the US Food and Drug Administration. Okay. So any producer from any country can get advantage of this production. And I have to say that the priority review voucher has been very valued because it's possible to exchange it. And at a certain moment, the value of this document has been over $100 million. because you can imagine that if you apply 6 months advance into a review of a blockbuster drug like an anti-cancer or something that is going to have a huge benefits, the value of 6 more months of patent protection and ability to commercialize is huge. So we have obtained the priority review voucher for Fexinidazole recently in July, and this is going to be shared, as I mentioned, between DNDi and Sanofi. And this is going to be very helpful to support development of other products, even for ourselves.
Thank you very much for that. I think it's a very important incentive, as we all know that investments in neglected tropical diseases are very low. So this is actually quite encouraging news that for product developers out there who would like to invest in research and development of neglected tropical diseases, there is this option to get this kind of incentives. Hopefully that will improve the research and development and make more products available.
What I would like to add here is that you from the Japanese Alliance for Global NTDs, you could also advocate for Japan to prepare similar kind of incentives to develop drugs for neglected tropical diseases. You don't need to go to the United States or the European Union. In Japan, it can also be done by regulatory original ideas.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I've had, I don't have much details, but I've heard that Japan has a similar tool, but probably something that we need to look into as well. Thank you very much. So, and to go back again to the presentation from Florent, I think one of the things that you've highlighted in your presentation is that even having the product available does not necessarily mean that the people who need the drug actually have access to it for different reasons. So we have some comments in the Q&A here that are related to that presentation. One of them is that has the population accepted this medicine without any questions, or there was some resistance at the beginning? And how did you deal with those kind of rumors about this new product? And also probably related to that is also the question that why have countries not adopted the new, the new WHO sleeping sickness guidelines? Florent? Okay, thank you very much for the question. I can start. You know that 10 years ago, we used the melarsoprol as the treatment of sleeping sickness for the second stage. Melarsoprol is a toxic drug in the basis of arsenic. And then if you treat 100 of patients with melarsoprol, you can have 5 to 10% of this patient can develop arsenical encephalopathy. For them, you can have maybe more than 80 or 9% of these patients presenting encephalopathy arsenical can die. You know that some in the population in remote area, the population didn't come to the screening because of this drug. That's why the manager of the National Sleeping Control Program with the partner proposed that we can discover another non-toxic drug for this population because they are fear for melarsoprol. That's why DNDi conducted this study about fexinidazole. And I remember since the beginning of
these treatments in the field, the population and the care worker, the health worker are very, very, very glad for this treatment, because the fexinidazole can be given without lumbar puncture. You know, in the remote setting, most of the population don't like lumbar puncture. That's why they don't want to come to screen during the active screening performed by mobile team or mini mobile team. With this drug, we organize the sensitization of the population to tell them that if you are diagnosed for sleeping sickness, you can be treated without doing the lumbar puncture. These treatment includes the adherence of the treatment for the population living in endemic area.
Thank you.
So about the guideline, I say that we started this process in 2002 in African endemic countries. We organized some training. We started by DRC, Central African Republic, and Guinea, Angola, and also Uganda. But we go slowly, country by country, so that they can be able to adopt the WHO Act guideline, and also to obtain the authorization of fexinidazole use in the Ministry of Health in their endemic countries. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Florent, for that. I guess it's really a question of time before the message gets out there that there's a new and better drug, and it will take time for people to get used to it. And going to the question of diagnosis, you already answered some of the questions that are being asked in the chat. But I just wanted to say, I don't think, anyone who knows what a lumbar puncture is, I don't think anybody would want to have a lumbar puncture just for screening purposes. So I can understand the fear from the population of this diagnostic method. But maybe back to Olaf, are there any moves towards developing better screening tools or diagnostic tools for sleeping sickness, so that we can have a kind of package? Because people were afraid of being screened because of the method that was being used. Now we have a better drug. So I'm assuming we would like to screen more so people can have access to this drug. So what's the planning on that?
So as the main intention is to follow a similar path to us. So there are organizations like FIND or the Tropical Medicine Institute of Anvers in Belgium, which have developed rapid diagnostic tests. Florent did a quick overview, especially because this is not the subject of this talk, but it is progressing. What's also interesting here is that the acoziborole that was also briefly mentioned by Florent is another drug that we are in a later stage of development. We completed the pivotal trial with success, and acoziborole has a lot of advantages because it has very little adverse effects, and also it is a single dose, is taken in one day. So this is something that we are very, very excited with this medicine, because, and then I go back to the diagnosis concept, because at this stage we could do like it's done in other diseases with a poor toxicity drug and very easy to administer. We can do a strategy which is test and treat with a simple test that we may perhaps overtreat some patients, and a low toxicity drug, we can increase very much the coverage.
Thank you for that response. As we're getting closer and closer towards the end, and as often happens with this kind of discussions, things become more animated towards the end. We have quite a few interesting questions, which unfortunately we might not be able to answer in this session. We have questions on stigma, we have questions on regulatory approval. But I just wanted to say to the audience, we're going to respond to all these questions, and they will be attached to the video when it's going to be put online. But maybe just one last question directed to both Olaf and Florent. It's about regulatory approval. There's an interesting question which I think could be very good to get your perspective on. So there's a question that you mentioned that the drug was approved by the European Medicines Agency, and it was used in Congo. So basically, if you get approval from EMA, you can use it in African countries without applying for approval separately. This is the question. I think it's very important to clarify that question. Yeah.
Yes, well, I actually flew over this subject, but it is very important. Up to now, approval is national approval. The recommendation from the European Medicines Agency is specifically called scientific opinion, because they do not approve for use inside the European market. But as I mentioned quickly, these discussions that were happening within the European Medicines Agency took part with regulators from DRC and Uganda, which meant that if we got the scientific opinion from the European Medicines Agency on the 15th of November 2018, quickly it passed. The dossier was submitted by Sanofi to the DRC regulatory authorities, and the approval was obtained on the 24th of December, which was a quick, very, very quick review, because they were already aware in the regulatory authorities of DRC. So it took just 1 month and 10 days, and this is something that is magnificent.
Yeah, thank you. And if I may also add in response to that question, that the outcome would be to have any product, new or otherwise, regulatory approved in the country of use. But we know, if we just talk of Africa, we have 54 different countries, and each country has its own regulatory process. So what usually happens is most products are they aim for what is called the stringent regulatory approval, which is US FDA, the Japanese regulatory authorities, EMA. And with that, you can then take that regulatory approval to the country where you would like to register your product, and it sort of makes it easier for the product to be registered in country, but they'll still need to follow the national regulatory processes. But there are many different ways you can approach this, and the WHO has systems to support in-country registration of new products. But I think it's a whole different topic that we could have a different session on. But thank you very much for that. And I also wanted to say that the EMA process you've mentioned was formerly called Article 58. For those who might know about Article 58, it's now called EMA Medicines for All. Thank you very much for that. And unfortunately, we have run out of time, so I'll hand back to Yoshioka-san for the closing.
Okay, thank you, everyone. And yeah, I know that we have a lot of things to discuss in the talk, but the time is up now. And we learned a lot from you, Dr. Olaf and Florent. I appreciate that your presentation made a lot of connection to our first session, and we understand very clearly what a problem now and how you are trying to solve them. Thank you very much. So to the audience, a recorded version of today's session will be available on the JAGntd's website. And as Isaac said, we'll also try to answer the questions that we couldn't take today. And okay, I hope I can see you again in our next session in November. In our next session, session 3, we will look at access challenges of a forthcoming medicine for treatment of schistosomiasis among children. And more details will come soon on the JAGntd's website, so please stay tuned. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, speakers. Thank you, Isaac. So see you next time. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.